Hey, Mark, let me tell you something right now. Okay. I'm the one that takes the siestas, and you're the guy that says Eloy's taking a siesta. It's not. Eloy says Mark's taking a siesta, and I'm the one saying Mark's taking. You get my point. What the heck went on, dude?
Well, all I'll say is don't pay the ransom. I escaped. It was, it was, this was some exciting stuff that just happened, man. I mean, we've had a little alert here, thunderstorm warnings most of the day, but we always get severe weather warnings and thunderstorm warnings, and we get thunderstorms here just like anybody else does. But this one came in, and I mean, it came in hard and fast. And all of a sudden, I mean, it started dumping hail and rain. Luckily, the hail was, the biggest was maybe about the size of my thumbnail, about dime size. But it was hitting so hard, and the wind was blowing so hard that it was just like, holy cow. This is what Eloy goes through in Miami with a hurricane? No, thank you. So I'm not going to say that's never happened here, just that that's not normal. It doesn't happen here a lot. I mean, I've never seen it rain that hard here. Okay.
It's like a block. It's like a block of weather just came over your house and dumped and left. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, it finally blew through. Now, am I freezing up, or am I got cruddy connection, or?
You're not free. Your audio is fine. You're not freezing up. However, your visuals is slightly pixelated, but audio-wise, audio-wise, it's fine. And visually, you're kind of like in 2003.
Oh, that good, huh? Okay, let me see what I can do here. Man, this is something. This is really something. You know what? I've never seen that hard of hail. I mean, it was hitting hard, man. Oh, well.
Oh, okay, dude, if you're talking that way in your area, or if you're talking that way, I could just imagine if you spent a few seasons or a season in Miami.
Yeah, no,
it's wild.
I lived in Savannah, Georgia, and we didn't have any hurricane warnings or anything like that for us. A couple of them went to the north of us, a couple of them went to the south of us, but we didn't get hit by anything while we were there. But no thanks, you can have that stuff. No thanks. This was just all of a sudden a big, massive kaboom, and then it's blown through. It's still raining, but nothing like it was just a couple of minutes ago. So, of course, cable internet went out.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, if the internet goes out, everything goes out. And there's no phone, no nothing. No TV, no anything. But this time it was just the internet that went out, and I had to reset the modem and reset the router, and here I am. So,
I mean, judging by what you're saying, and it's obviously it's a human thing, because when I've been down, I do the explanation of what's been going on and stuff. But me asking 2003 Mark Lindsay.
Mm-hmm.
If this were a permanent scenario, if this were sort of like a permanent scenario, and we were by the way, the cool thing is we connect the way we do, and we have the advantage of, and it's really an advantage of the visual.
Right.
Sure. It's not as, the visual is not as perfect through a computer as see now it got better.
Okay, yeah, I just fired up my webcam control software, and I'm trying to reset everything. Okay.
Well, so we have an advantage of this video thing, so we can see each other. It's not as perfect as, let's say, being in person in front of a person, but at the same time, when you're in front of a person, conversation is usually there's also the limitation of being in front of people. You can't expand. There's something to be said about this format that we use online, but if you took that out of the equation and we were back in the Stone Age when we were on phones, like we were just now, people out there, just to let you know, Mark gave me a ring. And notice I'm doing this when the truth is with my fingers, I'm doing the telephone signal with the hand. It's more like headset, but he gave me a ring, and we were able to talk while he was working on everything, like back in the day when you would just talk to somebody. You don't have the information of their expressions on the phone. You just have what's coming out of the phone and stuff. So there's limitations and cons and pros to each of these things. Obviously, not obviously, but I personally prefer this wonderful thing that we have, the internet and so on. But what if you had to what if you were stuck with no internet, dude? What do you do?
Well, what we used to do, talk to people. Of course, now I say that. My wife teaches the various of the fiber arts, as they call them, spinning and weaving and things like that. And she's off giving a lesson tonight down at her favorite local yarn shop. So I'm here by myself. If the power goes out, the internet goes out, everything goes out, all I can do is light up the lantern, which we have a couple of them in here for just this contingency, and dig out my book and go for it. Like I used to do, Right. I mean, this is convenient. It's very cool to have. But then again, if you don't have it, you do without, I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't want to go back to a life before internet. I mean, just simply put, who would? But, I could make do if I had to.
Well, if you were stuck on a mountain with just beef jerky, you could sure make do with that until but you're not happy. Right, you have to, but you're not necessarily thrilled about it.
No. I mean, but you make do, you do what you got to do, and then you move on. But yeah, if it sucks, but
okay, now we're expanding.
Well, because I got used to it. If I had never been introduced to the internet, I would have just kept plugging away.
Here's a question. Here's a question.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Well, but I've done the downgrade thing before, and I've told you this before, and I think I've mentioned it on the podcast when one of the first homes we lived in when we moved to Nevada, they introduced cable internet. Everybody was on dial-up. Then they introduced cable internet at 4 meg service. And I thought, man, this is great. This is excellent. Well, we bought a new house, moved into it, then come to find out they didn't have cable internet out there. They had cable TV, but they didn't have cable internet. That was in 2006. I had to downgrade from cable internet at 4 meg to 56K dial-up modem again. And I did that for 5 years. We bought the house and moved in 2006. 2011, we got cable internet again. And by that time, it was up to 12 gigs service, or 12 meg service, excuse me. And so when I got it back, it was lightning fast, I thought, at 12 meg. But I missed out on 5 years of a lot of stuff. I mean, when it takes 30 minutes to look at one picture, forget about video.
So you're saying that the picture, like, it starts to render slowly,
exactly.
And you're waiting. You're waiting. Is it slowly?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah,
And eventually, but halfway, and sometimes you decide halfway through, you're like, you know what, it's not worth it.
This picture isn't worth it exactly.
I can figure out the rest of it.
But everybody else was starting to get the high-speed internet. So remember back in the day when you used to be kind to the people you were emailing pictures to? So you would try to get the file size down.
Yeah.
You know, something like 1,000 pixels tall by 750 wide or something like that.
Yeah.
And you'd send that in an email because it didn't take forever to download. It took a little bit, but it didn't take forever for you to see it.
Yeah.
Well, as more and more people started getting high-speed internet, they gave less of a damn about anybody else and just started putting in the 3,000 by 2,500 photos. And I'm like, get a quarter of the way through it. This picture isn't worth it. Goodbye. Bail on that. What I would do to watch a video, what I would do is I would select a video and I would click on the button and go to bed. I'm serious.
Damn.
I click the button and go to bed. And then the next morning I could watch the video because it took that long to load. So you're talking about 1, possibly 2 videos a day. You couldn't get any more. It was just horrendous. So for 5 years, I missed out on a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff.
So my question, are you, one way to say it in a general sense is, are you smarter with the internet? Are we as a society smarter with the internet, or are you personally smarter with the internet or without? And I'll reiterate and I'll restate it in a more specific, that's a generalized open end, but in a more specific way. Because of the internet having more access to all sorts of information, whereas before, if you were interested in not only, let's say you're totally into like hibiscus flowers and the cultivation of the plant.
Okay.
You could go to the library and find a book, a lot of times from like 1963 with old hibiscus pictures, and the information is like from 1963 and stuff. And then you'd have to go over to the magazine section to see if there's something current, which is just a little article, the whole layout of the library.
Right.
But the information is there. Whereas right now, you not only, let's put it this way, not only hibiscus information, but all the way into its genetic, variations, all the way to buying a hat that says, I love hibiscus, or a shirt with hibiscus or bust,
Right.
So my question is, I guess it's an obvious one, but just your thoughts.
I don't know if we're any more intelligent. I think that we're just able to show our intelligence or our ignorance a lot faster to a lot more people. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Because if you take your example of going to the library and looking up various botany books about hibiscus and this, that, and the other, those books are your sources.
Yeah.
And they had to, I'm not saying that 100% of what they put in those books was true, but you could be a little bit more sure of those sources. Because if you're into, let's stick with hibiscus, if you're into gardening at all, the names of several sources that are pretty reliable. Better Homes and Gardens, just the Sierra Club, whatever. Of several different names of sources that you can more or less, Sunset Magazine, things like that. With the internet, you type in hibiscus and you can go in a million directions all at once. And anybody can put a web page up about anything. And anybody can go to Wikipedia and edit anything they want. If you want to go to a hibiscus article on Wikipedia and say the only way they'll grow is if you put a quart of 7-Up, dump a quart of 7-Up on them every 2 weeks, hashtag not sponsored. You know, you can say it and somebody's going to believe it. So it's harder to vet your sources online, but it's easier to take that one little nugget of bad information and spread it around the world instantaneously. So I don't know if we're smarter or that we can get smarter faster, but yeah, the information is a lot handier. You know, we can still go to Sunset Magazine or go to Better Homes and Gardens and look up hibiscus there.
.com.
But you have to know that, you know.
But the cool thing is you don't have to go to the actual physical brick and mortar establishment. You could go to their .com and you're exactly. So your point is well taken. I do want to go back to your Wikipedia thing. So and just mention this and see what you think. So there have been situations where I think you're the one that mentioned it. Yeah, you told the story of a guy that was supposedly a popular guy that they kept. He did one event or he had one encounter, and it wasn't really him, but they would keep adding the information.
Yeah,
and he would try to remove it and say, no, that's not me. And then they'd remove it. And then a few days later or a week later, boom, the information's back.
Yeah.
The thing about Wikipedia, it's good and it's bad. I think it's very good in a roundabout way. And in many cases, very specific. So the good thing about Wikipedia, in my opinion, and it's an obvious one, is that they have linked footnotes to other articles where you can expand. If, like, let's say they say John the blacksmith, you know, that lived in Kent in 1863 was married to the widow of the bailiff of the court in that town, and they had the now famous, you know, surgeon, blah, 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 whatever. If they have all this information and then they have no footnote to that information, your choice is to just accept it or not, or just treat it as, okay, well, where did that come from? It's the same issue with the reptilian situation agenda. You could say anything, like you had mentioned in the previous episode, but you need to at least point so that people can point to a source so people can go in and then sort of look at that. And even that should have sources of their own, and you could find a trail to a guy sitting in a hut with a pipe in some New Mexico desert saying, right, lizard people came to my house and abducted my twin nephews. But the cool thing about Wikipedia is that they do have footnotes and you can expand on it. You still have to parse through information, right, in anything, because you can, and some things we just can't. Well, some things is so elaborate that you just can't, like, you have to at some point say, I roundabout am citing on this, you know.
But then again, even with the footnotes, they're only as accurate as that source. The guy that you're talking about, and the story that I've told before, is a British comedian by the name of Dave Gorman. And he looked himself up online because somebody asked him about it. He had done an event and somebody had asked him when he did that event and he couldn't remember. So he just Googled himself and looked at the Wikipedia article. And in that article, it said that he had taken a year off and done a sponsored tour of the Pacific Rim. And he'd never done that. Well, so he mentioned that on Twitter, and somebody came back to him, you know, commented on his tweet and said, that's gone now. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
While it was down, he was busy searching for it to try to figure out where the heck this came from. And he found a local newspaper that had quoted that said, yeah, he had taken a year off and did a sponsored tour of the Pacific Rim countries.
And that's there forever.
But then he got a hold of them and told them, no, I never did that. They printed a retraction. And that was cool. But like the day after that guy took it off of Wikipedia, somebody put it back on with that newspaper as a source. So the newspaper was wrong. Nobody bothered to source the retraction from that newspaper. So he says he gets asked about it so often. He thought about just saying, yeah, I had a really good time, and just make up stories about it because he can't get rid of it. It just keeps following him. So the footnotes are only as good as the source. And if you pick a source that's wrong and don't look at their corrections or their retractions, false stuff can follow you all over the place. So we're smarter and dumber at the same time, I guess.
So in an article on Wikipedia, unlike an article in a book, and I'm not necessarily, I guess I am taking the position of defending Wikipedia to some degree, with the caveat that errors are going to be found because we're human. But unlike a newspaper or a book or a magazine, in the very article of Wikipedia, it can be updated, without any reprinting necessarily of physical. So it does have that advantage. It also has the only option that we can afford. The best thing we can do is have actual footnotes. There's no real other way but to chase the footnotes. Right. And the more footnotes, the better. But we really don't have any other tools to sort of end it. But we do. You know what? Another good thing is in books, they do what is it? Revisions or new volumes where they fix certain things. So they do have that. But the original volume is printed, and depending on what was in error, it can create all sorts of things on different topics. But we don't have any other. So going to the lizard thing as an example, we don't have any other option but to either take somebody's word for it. Hey, Mark, they slam open the door. Mark, you can't. Aliens have just abducted my family, but they came back and they don't remember anything, but I saw it all. So you either you have to take it and say, okay, fine, Bob, no problem, I believe you, or say, you've got no proof. So maybe in your brain, I don't know, but I can't really do anything with that. We can't do without a paper trail or a conversation with proofs and stuff. We can't really do anything other than speculate.
It's more than just that. There are a lot of things. My next door neighbor coming over and telling me that his wife was abducted by aliens. The first thing I'm going to do is go check his backyard to see if I find any fresh dirt. Not because I think that he's that way, but I also don't think that he's the kind to come along and tell me his wife's been abducted by aliens, unless I've totally misread the dude. But credibility and I get this.
Credulity?
Yes, I get that word wrong all the time. Credibility and credulity are important. I can say anything. I can say anything at all. Can I back it up? Probably not. But, unless I know it's an absolute fact. This is my coffee cup, and I can prove that. Here it is. I can mail it to you if you want it, but I'm going to need a deposit. Well, that kind of thing. So there are certain things that you just cannot deny. There are other things that you can. But then again, going back to the Wikipedia thing, I will defend them as well because I think they're a good source, but I don't believe any one source. I look at other things and research on my own because people are people. They make mistakes. They get things wrong. I I'm a typo king. I am totally supported by spell check. I do just about everything in a word processor, spell check it, then post it. Just about everything. So people are people. They make mistakes.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
But you have the ability with Wikipedia that if you find a source, an out of print book, for example, you can, so long as it's not copyright violation, of course, if it's out of print, it may or may not still be under copyright. You can copy a page of that book, put it up on the Internet Archive or put it up on Google Docs or something like that and reference that page. And there's your on the spot correction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you're right. It doesn't have to go through a process. Good grief. I got the hiccups now. This is a great episode, Eloy. I'm telling you, man. There is a process, but it's not a long, lengthy process. It's not like you have to put it in front of a publisher and let their proofreaders go through it and their editorial staff and then their lawyers and all this other stuff. You can make on the spot corrections right there, so long as you can provide a source. And I think that's a good thing. I really do, because there's a lot of bad information out there. There really is.
It's all that you're able to. So with an actual, so the thing is this: if a lie, either or a untruth,
Mm-hmm.
either by design or human error, without any malice, it's going to creep into whatever medium and format exists in the world across the board. Right. Because the fact that human beings are involved in it, there is that possibility of errors, and they can blow up into huge errors. But if you use the magnifying glass and you step, the telescope, and you step back in a general way, if they talk about the history of Renaissance France, and mm-hmm. and the downfall of the royals, the Bourbons, you can pull back that lens and say, okay, in a general sense, we're in the area, and then you can focus in, and okay, there's all these subjects and issues and occurrences, and with Wikipedia, you could do that, and you could see that they have footnotes. Now, even though they said this guy died in this battlefield, or this royal got hung, guillotined, at this time, this hour, this and that, they will have these footnotes. If the information is not there, or if the footnote is not available, they'll have it saying this requires footnotes and so on. So what I'm trying to say is that obviously it's not perfect, but if you read an article, it will hint you, it will show you this has no footnote, this, and you'll read it and you'll see what's going on in a sort of distant, telescope kind of view. Right. But at the end of the day, if you wanted to be very precise, you could click those either 1, 2, multiple, or non-existent. If there's non-existent, you have to do your own. But at least they have a intelligent process, but it's community monitored or community edited.
Moderated and driven, yes.
So your thing about the publisher, I would say that if it's one publisher with, do I believe one publisher over a community continuously edited article? I'd say that they both have their value.
They do. It does have a value. And that's what I'm getting at, because you are not the only one that can edit that. Anybody can edit it. And if somebody went into Jimi Hendrix's Wikipedia article and said he was right-handed or played a right-handed guitar, right side up, there's 7 billion people on this planet that can come in and correct it and provide sources. So it's not just one person that can make the correction. And if you jump over to an article today, right now, we don't know how many revisions that article has gone through just today or just within the last half hour. There are enough people out there that do have sources or know of other sources to get the information from and then link it back to that article. So I think it's a good source, but I don't think it should be used as the only source. I think it's a great place to go find more information because of those footnotes. You may find an article about Jimi Hendrix or a biography that you've never read before that's linked as a reference to a fact about him, for example. And then you go find that, oh man, I got to get this book. I've read a bunch of biographies, but I've never read this one. So, it's a good starting point, but I don't think it's the end all and be all, just simply because it's too easy to edit, But like I say, I don't trust just any one source of anything, really.
I mean, they're not a source, to be clear.
They're more of a
aggregate.
Yeah, it's a collection of different sources or just people's recollections,
Yeah, but I give it a little bit. Maybe we give it the same weight. I like the idea that there's footnotes, and I actually use them. Mm-hmm. But then again, it depends on one's interest. So maybe it's just enough for most people. If it's just enough for you to read the article, and there's nothing wrong with that, and you get the gist of it, which is the gist of it. There might be points that you're taking away from it that aren't accurate. If accuracy was your intention, and if for my money, I think that accuracy is worth it, because it's better to know a thing for what it is than not, whatever topic that might be.
Sure.
But for most people, it's okay to just read. See, here's the funny.
Get the cliff notes,
Well, here's the funny and scary thing. That, in my opinion, many people, a Wikipedia article is enough.
Mm-hmm.
Many people, it's not enough, and they go maybe do the footnotes. Mm-hmm. Some people, that's not even enough, and they go and read the books that the footnotes are footnoting to, and so on and so forth. You have all these levels.
That's fine.
But on the other side of the spectrum, you have people, and this is the good one, and this is the scary part, that don't even necessarily worry about the footnotes, the books, the this, the that. It's all, let's say, a post, a paragraph, worse, a sentence, worse, a meme, worse, word of mouth suppositions.
Well, I read it on Facebook. It has to be true.
So it goes in both directions. I would, and by the way, it's normal because we're human. We can't focus on everything we'd like to, and sometimes people don't have that interest in the journalism. So they end up with this. So the dangerous part is people that are hanging their hats on slim to no information, and it's their total. We're human. We have the right to do. But in those cases, there's not a lot of information circling around the brain.
It depends on how deep you want to dive into something. If I want to know what album a song is on and I can't remember, I know I can, generally speaking, go look up the band, find their discography on Wikipedia, and there's a track listing, and I can, it was on that album. Okay, great. And I'm gone. I'm off it. I'm done. I can go look up and see, is that album available on Amazon or whatever. I mean, but it's a quick source if you're doing something like that. But if you're trying to research something, if you want to research your hibiscus trees, it's a starting point, because there is a lot of information collated and collected there. How reliable the article is, I don't know, but it's a repository. It is, like you said, you have all those footnotes there, and there are other places to go from there. It's a good starting point. But I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it until they throw dirt in my face. If you get all of your information from any one source, that's a major mistake. That is a major mistake, because there's mistakes. disinformation, a bias, an agenda. Do your due diligence and do your research. You know,
if you're interested in actual,
if you're that interested in that subject, you know,
Yeah.
you are not going to become an expert on anything through Wikipedia. You're just not. It's a good place to start. And it's the cliff notes. If you can't remember who wrote a book, you can type in the title and you can find the author's name. But if you are using a Wikipedia article for a term paper, you're in trouble. Good luck, my friend.
The good thing also about the Wikipedia is that those I guess the links to those footnotes open up, depending on the subject, into in-depth stuff, you know. So it's not like they're trying to pull your chain necessarily, but the human error element is involved. But all these footnotes lead to, in many cases, interesting new discoveries,
Sure.
all in their own.
Sure.
So don't take the page itself and say, okay, this is, because it is the cliff notes, because you don't have any background of where all these things are coming from. Check where all these things are coming from.
Sure.
I in a general sense, it's hit or miss, depending on how much backing up of the information exists.
And it depends
on
on
that
what
page.
and it depends on what the information is.
And its severity, right? If you're talking about like,
well, you can look up some subjects and there'd be like 3 lines,
right?
You know, because people just haven't fleshed it out and haven't put that much stuff in it, you know. And you can make a Wikipedia page about yourself right now if you want to, and tell people that you were born on the planet Rex Lax and that you've got 2 left feet and, you know, 11 fingers on each hand. It's up to it. Technically, it's up to you to prove that point. But if you put it out there with no sources, what am I going to do?
Right. And nobody, another thing about this whole thing is that whatever we read, engage in, and all that. So if somebody comes across that page, and one reads that, it's possible that some folks it's possible, maybe a lot of people will take that and say, holy smokes,
we've seen it.
This is earth-shattering stuff. But people that are fairly, you know, like balanced in this world will say, well, that's a lot of hogwash. You know, look at this. This is ridiculous. But there is that contingency out there, whatever, you know, amount of people that, I mean, truth is not important to them necessarily on whatever subject.
Or their mind is already made up. You also have the personal agenda of the reader. Yeah. Their mind is made up. Don't confuse me with the facts.
Yeah. Well, so here's an interesting thing with books. You were saying that Jimi Hendrix. So there is a sort of scenario where throughout the 70s and 80s, people were writing about the Beatles. And depending on the author, and I've read a few of those books, but depending on the author, and there's an actual, I'm going to try to look for the page, for the video. It's pretty interesting if you're a Beatles fan, but depending on the author and who they liked, okay, see, or who they liked and who they didn't like, their book was slanted to either Paul McCartney in an extreme way, or John Lennon, like the guy explains, in this book about the Beatles, Paul McCartney seems like an axe murderer and had no talent and like limping on one foot. And John Lennon was just the master of reality and music, because it depended on their personal relationship.
Personal agenda,
And so so now there's this whole catalog of different Beatles books. And and he also mentioned, but when the Beatles put out their own thing, they didn't go into like, you know, the nastiness that occurred in some, you know, parts of their career. They paint it as a beautiful explosion of flower power, you know, from 1964 on through into the 70s of wonderful. So they paint it that way. The one guy paints Paul, the other guy paints this, and so there's that issue, and it's a human issue.
Sure.
And so some people like Paul.
Yeah.
Paul's I love all the Beatles, but Paul's my favorite. And
Yeah.
some people like Ringo, and and
I was
so
getting ready to, I was just getting ready to say, let's not even bring up those Ringo Starr perverts. You know how those people get. But yeah, you have personal agendas, personal likes and dislikes, and you can find that all over the place. And we've seen it before. Somebody take just a nugget of something and just take it as gospel and just run with it. It's the internet has become, you were talking about are we smarter or are we dumber? With the internet, it's replaced the water cooler at work. Because how many times you've been sitting at break time in a break room or on a construction site or in the cabinet shop or whatever, been sitting off, taking a break, BSing with your buddies, and somebody say, well, they've done a study that said the reason wives live longer than their husband is because they're not married to women. That's a good joke. It sounds funny, but who did the study? What study? But you hear that, you take that little information and you find, oh, okay, yeah, all right. You file that away. No source, no frame of reference, no nothing.
Yeah,
well, yeah, the only difference is now we can put it out to more people right now, instantaneously.
And if you like the idea, it could be whatever, but let's say that. And if you like the idea because you're biased towards that concept or whatever, which is in itself, whatever, it's fine. It doesn't we're generally speaking, but it'll propagate. But then if you trail back to whatever the darn source, it was just a ridiculous. But you know what? That is part of the human experience throughout history. Like back in the day, I used to love this. I read a book about Benjamin Franklin, and which is a controversial figure for some people in itself for some reason. Well. And no, everything. But look, there's nothing that you can say that will please or at least maintain, some sort of calm around the frickin' water cooler. There's nothing. It could be I like number 2 pencils better than the mechanical ones. Bam, argument because human beings are forever. And if that's the case, which it is, my attitude is I'm gonna do what the hell I want, the way I want, when I want, and think what I want. But I do want to know the truth of the thing. But people are liable to. So here's the thing. Crap! I went too far, and I gotta pull my rowboat down because I was saying, number 2 pencils.
The thing about it is, and you don't want me to get off on a rant about that, about being offensive or getting offended or anything like that. You don't want to,
Benjamin Franklin.
Yes.
Benjamin. Okay. Benjamin. It took me. I'm sorry. So, I've always loved within the Benjamin Franklin thing. In the 1700s, it was believed that lightning striking a house, an establishment, was an act of God. And the firefighters would come out and they would take care that the houses next to it, the buildings next to it, would not burn. But the house itself, they wouldn't think much of it. Not to say they'd let people burn and fry inside, but you get my point. Their idea was, well, it hit this house. They had to have done something wrong, and so they did something wrong. So, you know what I'm saying? So,
cosmic karma.
So right. So these people, and so, but what are the ramifications of that? Then the whole village is like, and they survive, and so it's the family with the kids and stuff. And they're like, So they did something. It's really screwed up. Well, Benjamin Franklin comes along and invents the lightning rod. And it just obliterated a paradigm that prior was the norm.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's kind of like that like that video that I sent you that you had already seen. For me, I never got to tell you. I think I told you I saw. So there's this video with 60 frames per second footage redone from 1899 somewhere in France of people by the beach. And I saw that, and I was that's why I shared it with you. I was so blown away by it. It's not like I've never seen old footage, but there's people dressed in what we would consider fine dining, attire.
Yeah, they're Sunday finest. Yeah,
they're Sunday finest on the beach, flapping around the mud or the sand and water, dressed to the hilt, flooding the shorelines of a beach, city in the background with smoke billows going up into the sky, and in real time, 60 frames per second, it looks really good. And it shocked me thinking you'd never see that today. Their reality and their thought process, everything, there was a different, and it kind of blew me away. So whatever, people paradigm shifts,
Well, back in the day, we in America, in most places, not all of them, but we never really were much for that Sunday promenade, going out to be seen for the specific purpose of being seen in your finest clothes. And that was the only reason for it, was just to go take a walk along the beach, just so people would see you in your best clothes. Yeah. We never really, there are a few exceptions. There are a few places where that did take off and kind of take root. But for the majority of the country, we never really did that. That still, to a point, continues in some places in Europe today. By law in Germany, all the stores are closed on Sunday. By law. Gas stations can be open, and if there's a little convenience market as part of that gas station, and it depends on the city you're in. In some cities, you can't go into the store. You walk up to the window with the little speaker and microphone, and you tell the guy, I want a 6-pack of Coke, please, along with my gas. And he'll go to the cooler and get your 6-pack of Coke, put it in the little drawer, like the drive-up teller at the bank, and shove it open, and there's your Coke, But you will find downtown in most cities jam-packed with people because everybody's there to people watch.
Yeah.
And they do that. They get in their nice clothes and they'll go downtown and walk around just to see other people, to see what they're wearing. They're very fashion conscious, and just to see what the new trends are and how people are dressing. But I mean, not a store open, not a kiosk open, not a vendor open, but the place is crowded with people just watching people.
It's an amazing thing.
It was a weird thing for me. So what you're talking about with that film, it was sped up to 60 frames per second, colorized using AI, and they're getting better, but they're still not good. If you watch, focus on a particular person in that film, and they come walking toward the camera and then get kind of close to the camera, see the camera, and kind of turn off to the side and head out.
Yeah.
The colorization drops out.
Oh, yeah.
Watch, and they'll go back to black and white. It'll still be nice in 60 frames per second, but the colorization goes away. It's
what we're seeing. Well, no, so we can't squeeze, blood out of the rocks. It is what it is.
It's getting there, but it's just not perfect yet.
It's what it is it's a simulation of reality that we're not watching the events. I mean, it's literally a simulation anyhow, because what it is in its rawest form, it's just picture after picture that was taken and then ran together one after film. Right. But what they've taken it one step further to try to bring that realism of what we would see today.
Right.
But the artifacts to that, I mean, they're taking really old footage, 200,
Right.
150-year-old footage or whatever it is, and they're modernizing it. But you do see color drop-offs.
Yes.
But with that said, it gives you an overall.
Yes. And it's
You know what I'm
very
saying?
good. It's very, very good. And it even more than that, these were hand cranked movie cameras. And I don't know if you've ever cranked anything by hand and measured. Just look at how steady you are at cranking that. You're going to go a little bit faster on the forward stroke from the top than you are from the bottom stroke pulling back, because you can put more power into pushing than you can pulling. So it's uneven. It's not a constant frame rate. And what was that frame rate? 18 to 24, maybe 28 frames per second, something in like that. So what it's doing is it's taking that frame of film and then the next frame of film, and it's using AI, artificial intelligence technology, to fill in what happened between those two frames to get it up to 60 frames per second.
Yeah.
So it takes what's there, averages it out, and then adds more frames to it to get it to that 60 frames. Then they get into colorizing, and then they get into all the other stuff. So it's fascinating technology.
It is, yeah.
It's really cool, because I'm like you. I see something, a trip to the beach in 1899. I'm like, 1899? That's 122 years ago. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy.
Let's check it out. And I'm right there. I mean, it came up in my suggested videos list, and boom, and you just happened to send it to me the day after that. And I was like, yeah.
But also the fact that they're modernizing it kind of shifts my perception to see the the old, 100 and some odd year old footage, 122 years. It makes me look at it like it brings it contemporary, which is actually what they're kind of trying to do in a way. It's to see them moving at that more normal movement, and it joggles a little bit the, you know what I'm saying, the brain.
I do.
And boy, I mean, because you usually see those women with the big hats kind of standing there, but when you see them walking like normal, like it makes you think, boy, they were the clothing was cumbersome as hell. I mean, would you be happy wearing those three-piece suits?
You're talking to a guy who watched his wife hand sew an outfit from the 1700s. All of the parts and pieces that went into making that outfit of a working woman, just a working class woman. This is her get up in the morning and go to work clothes. And the layers and the number of garments, the number of separate garments that made up that outfit is just staggering. And she finished it in July, and we've got it on video. She's standing there in it in the middle of July. It's awesome. 100 degrees, and it's like, oh my God, no, ain't no way. Well, she's researching, going to be making another outfit of a working class woman out on the pioneer trails in the 1860s. And she's going to make another outfit for her spinning demonstrations and weaving demonstrations and things like that. She likes to dress, period, and wants to get as accurate as she can.
It's amazing.
So looking at those people in that film, it was kind of like that was the style, that was the fashion. But you can also kind of understand why fashion changes so much, and comfort became more important than style or fashion, because you can pile up the hat with all the feathers and bows and flowers and ribbons, but now you got to wear that 10-pound sucker up and down the beach in high heel hobnail boots that button up to the top of your ankle and walk around in the middle of summer along the beach in that thing. Is that really something that you want to do?
I mean,
no, that's not what you want to do.
That was their reality. But on that note, I also ran across just this past week or the week before pictures of old Florida. And we do have old 1890s. Miami was around in those early years, and people have been in Florida for quite a long, even before that. But let's say what we would call Miami now and all this, there's old pictures with like horse and carriage here as well. Not as much as you'd find out west for some reason. Then again, this was established in the late 1800s, but somewhere thereabouts. But I was looking at some pictures, and people were dressed like the people that we are talking about in the video, but here in Florida with the 3-piece suits and the hats, and I was like, in France, okay, somewhere else, maybe upstate New York, out in the West, up north, but in Miami, any suit, a 3-piece suit, or let alone any suit, holy smokes. And people do it now, obviously professionals and so on, but they have cars they get into that are climate controlled towards a building that's climate controlled. Whereas back then, holy smokes, dude.
You wore silk and you wore cotton and you wore linen because they would breathe. You didn't wear wool because you'd die a heat stroke.
Oh, could you imagine a wool sweater in Florida?
Yeah, well, it depends on what time of the year too. But this is something that Linda and I have discussed a lot when talking about her research for an outfit from the 1860s. Is it's very difficult to go by photographs. Now, you're talking about these pictures of people in Miami, old photos. Were they sitting for portraits, or is this just photos out on the street?
Like some on the beach and some on like city roads and whatnot. And it's like, I mean, it's cool, but how much cool? I mean, I like the other type of cool where
exactly.
Cool.
So, if it's wintertime and you're talking it's 55 degrees, you can see it. But if it's the middle of summer and it's 89 degrees and you can see the air because of the humidity, now you're talking just nuts. But in researching that outfit for her, what we have to be careful about is you can't include portrait photography because portraits were so expensive. To go down and get your picture taken, it would be like a month's salary. It was extremely expensive. And some people may only have their photo taken once in their lifetime. So when they did, they dressed in the best clothes that they had. The absolute best clothes that they had. Now, I've shown you pictures of my 3 times great-grandmother and great-grandfather. Yeah. That's the only known photograph of them. I don't know. There may be others, but I don't know of them. And they're dressed in the best clothes that they have. So that's not typical of what they wore every day, but that's typical of what they looked like when they got dressed up to go to church or to go for something like that. So
my great-grandfather, Felix, Patricio Felix Escagedo Salmon. All these years I had one photo of him that my grandfather carried in his wallet all his life, that my dad showed me and told me, this little photo, just like this, your grandfather carried in his wallet of his dad, from his dad's photo all his life. It was the only photo he had. And I took it and blew it up with digitally, and you could see the lines in the face and everything. And he looks like my grandfather. And in turn, like my father when he got old, and what I'm going to look like when probably, you could see, I look at him and I'm looking at basically, he's my direct.
Yeah.
I look at him and I'm like, yeah, I'm from him, period. Like, it's like, but he was wearing he was wearing a suit for that picture, and his hair's all messed up. I'm like, yeah, that too, because I usually don't. So I think I take after my great grandma. And it was the only photo, but he had this suit of the era from the 1800s. And then a cousin of mine from Spain sent me and she didn't know it was there, that he was there. It was the only other photo of him in a wedding. It's a tiny photo like this of a wedding and my great grandfather is standing in the corner next to his brother. And I could see it. And he's wearing the same suit. It's a fancy suit. It's not a super ultra, but it's like a suit like going somewhere. But that couldn't have been. He didn't wear that all the time. So they probably, depending on their wealth and whatnot, they probably had one good suit that they took care of for years and decades, probably. The rest of it had to be something. Effect.
Oh, definitely, because clothing was expensive, and although they tended to make their own clothing a lot, not everybody was good at it, and not everybody did it that way. So clothing was expensive as heck, and that's why, that's why it was such a big deal. And men especially made a big deal. I want to be buried in this suit, because it's probably the only suit they had, and they wore it their entire lifetime. You didn't just go out and buy clothes. We're spoiled nowadays in that we don't like this. Oh, I don't like the color of this t-shirt. I'm going to go get another one and give this to a charity shop or something like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't that way back then, man. You made your own clothes. If you were lucky, you would get one store-bought outfit your entire lifetime. So it just depends. But to bring it back to the thing about Wikipedia and the facts and the veracity, if that's all you ever see is people dressed in absolutely their best clothes, you think that that's how they dressed every day. And there's no footnote to deny that. There's no real source. You have to hunt. And that's what we're trying to do. But you're back in that era where...
No, but there's pictures of people doing labor stuff. And you can see.
There is, but you don't know the context of the photo. You don't know, was it staged? You don't know, did they pick out these people because they're dressed the nicest today? Is the lady over there with her hands down in the wash tub on a washboard, is that really what she does? Or is she one of the chambermaids that they brought out and just, here, hold on to that and look like you're doing something just long enough for this picture?
Well, no, but you can see that the clothes aren't.
There are candid photos, but they're not that common. You have to look for them, is all I'm getting at. You look for.
There's no photos from the 1700s.
No, there's not.
but there are paintings.
But you could put that on Wikipedia. But then again, even a painting, a portrait is expensive.
Yeah.
So you're going to dress up to look your absolute best.
When those photos first came out, could you imagine? Because even though you in the 60s, me in the 70s, we grew up with people as kids snapping shots of us in our faces to the point where I didn't even think about, like, I have all these baby pictures and I'm like, I don't remember, I was a baby, but all these pictures. So we grew up knowing there's a thing called a camera and pictures galore. And now we're in a different era where there's video and all these audio recordings and so on. But those people that first where that camera came out and that whole concept, that had to be just mind-blowing. I'm sure there's writings of people saying, boy,
it was magical. Away. It was completely magical. It was absolutely, how do you do that? How do you point a box with a piece of glass on the front of it, and the guy covers himself up and holds up the little thing and the flash powder goes off, and then a couple of months later you have a photograph? How do you do that? That's magic. It's witchcraft.
It's still magic.
Well, but think of how things have changed. Do they even do school photos anymore? Everybody has, everybody has a camera with them 24/7. Are school portraits even a thing anymore?
Like the school yearbook with all the pictures of the
Yeah.
kids.
I mean, we used to get dressed up, school picture days coming up. And I mean, you go get a haircut, you slick your hair, you do the whole thing, dress up in real nice clothes, and you go. They would take 3 or 4 photos. Mom and dad got to pick out the best ones. And then they had a class photo, the whole class with the teacher and a sign saying, Mrs. Dunn, grade 2, whatever school, this, that, and the other, and the school year. But do they even do that anymore? I don't even know why they would bother.
Did you always have your hair parted in the middle, combed like that?
No. The only reason it's parted in the middle now is because it's so long, because I'm looking for a new barbershop.
What would you
normally? I part it off to the side and comb it over.
As a kid, you grew up that way.
As a kid, I grew up that way. I didn't part my hair in the middle.
Okay, so I would always, as a kid, was combed with the part over here on my left-hand side, folding over to the right. Mm-hmm. All my life, right? I remember one photo thing for school as a little kid. And I took it when I got it back from home. I got it in school and brought it home. They gave it to you in class, and I pulled and looked at it. Well, the teacher at that time, my hair was messy or whatever, I don't know, and she went and parted my frickin' hair in the middle. And as a kid, you're not thinking about these things, but I felt something was terribly wrong. Like as a kid, you're like, you always do it like that, but I did not have the skills to say, no, teacher, it's on the side. You don't have the skills. You're a kid. You just accept what adults do. That's why kids are vulnerable, because, and so she parted it as opposed to on the side. She went clink with the comb and went rick, and they snapped the foot, and I took it home, and I remember being very upset, and my mom looking at it. She didn't say anything. Oh, that's it. But that's not what we did around. This is not what we did in our household. You don't part the hair, And I remember always hating that photo because of that. It's not me.
Yeah. I didn't much care. My mother was the only one that really wanted the photos. I didn't care. I really, it was just another school day to me. Now, because of her, I would have to dress up and this, that, and the other. But I want to go back to that video we were talking about the beach at 1899. And I want to take it in a direction you may or may not want to go in. But as I was watching that video, I got probably about the last 30 seconds of the video. And I'm sitting there watching the thing, and it just something clicked in my brain. And I said to myself, I said, look at the youngest person in this film.
The beach one.
Yes.
Okay.
Look at the youngest person in there. They're great grandparents, and they're no longer alive.
When then?
Nobody in that video
is alive. Yeah.
Is alive today.
Mm-hmm.
And it just was kind of a macabre thought. I got a little bit of a shiver there to think that the youngest person in that film footage
is not alive.
Is a great grandmother, great grandfather, great great grandmother, or grandfather
to someone today.
To somebody today, and they're no longer alive. They've lived an entire lifetime since that footage was taken, and we're sitting here just watching it for entertainment. That just kind of freaked me out. Kind of
the entertainment side, or just the entertainment
just
side?
The whole lifetime thing. That we're looking at that footage for whatever reason, curiosity, entertainment, or just to check out the AI aspect of it.
Well,
but very rarely do we ever think about the people who are in, unless it's somebody famous, if you're watching footage of FDR giving a speech, you're thinking about FDR, but you're probably not thinking about the people in the background.
Let me, well, go ahead. Cause I have a thoughts of my own.
Well, it's just that the people in the background, they were human too. They had lives, they had a story. And it was, just kind of a little bit of a reality check there. That's all.
Okay, so this is what I think when you just said that, and it's a great observation, and it's to me it's I'm glad you said it because it shows you know, heart in your on your part, vision and perception, and you know, just all these things that are human, and important, but not all humans contemplate certain things. Not that it's bad or good in either direction, but the ones that do, I think that I'm with that. So um, to me, if it's a JFK in a video, people know that's JFK, and they're looking and look, that's JFK. But nobody and thank goodness it's preserved in film and photos. But nobody in the future, currently, let's say, looking at that footage, has that's the intricacy of a human being's life as viewed through a camera snapshot or a video is not, even if it's JFK and people know it's JFK, there's more to JFK than he was our president. There's more to JFK than he was, you know, that happened to him. He was a human being as complex of a life and experience as each and every one of us, and we all have complex interactions and experiences that make up the things that are experienced. Right. So no photo or video will do justice to say my great grandfather in that little picture in his life. And so point well taken that there's so much more. These things have more meaning than we can actually ingest into. There's more value there than just, here's a magazine photo and toss it to the side.
And especially more than you're ever going to get out of any amount of footage or a single photograph.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot more.
So. Yes. And even if we, like, let's say, so we do this, there's a lot of information to be had from what we do here. Like in a future context, if people were so inclined to you know, page through our videos and really get down to the nitty gritty of what was Mark really like, and what does he think about this and that. Now let's catalog all this together into one thing, and they create this template of Mark Lindsay's thoughts and interactions, and maybe discussions with his co-host, and how were conversations, you know, there's a lot of information that we're putting out, not only by just simply being filmed here, you know, but by when you say something and I take it, and however it is, I reply to it, and vice versa. There's a lot of things going on here between us, the group out there, our interactions that we can't think of all the time because we wouldn't be able to function. But we're leaving traces of information everywhere we go. And in this medium, you have the luxury, future generations that say, it could be any video, but we're talking about this, let's say, they have the luxury of seeing us animated and talking words that have meaning, one after the other, and all these things contain information, but it's, even this is not the whole Mark Lindsay, Eloy, and some things, last thing I'll say, some things you don't want to have recorded. Like, you know, I sure got a bellyache. Bring the cameras in, folks. You know, there's a bunch of things that you wouldn't want to, but you get the point.
And that's one of the reasons why I like and I want to keep doing this podcast, is for my grandkids, my great-grandkids, my great-great-grandkids, because it is, as you say, this is a documentation of my thoughts, how I spoke, how I moved, my mannerisms, all that stuff. I only wish I could find some footage of my great-great-grandparents. You know, I met my great-grandfather on my father's side. I never met his father. He died long before I was born. If I could find film footage of him or hear his voice, I'd love it. So this is, for right now, it's for me and it's for you. But what we're doing is for our descendants, for future generations on down the road. And that's why, one of the reasons I like doing it, and why I want to keep doing it.
It's, and you know, that's the thing. Now there's all this information coming out, and there's a lot in that beyond what we might focus on in any given, and there's so many channels out there and this and that, but information has multiplied greatly. It would be easier for people in the future to look back at this time, and who knows how that would look like, but it'd be much easier for them to gather information and not everybody's online.
Sure.
But it would be easier to trace a lot of things compared to what we try to do going back from this point, because we're really at the explosion of technology all our lives, and even before that, and obviously afterwards, barring some sort of catastrophic thing, but we're really poised in a part of existence where timeline wise human existence where we're 1 foot in the past, 1 foot here, and we always are, but our past is shaded, is foggy, in that we have a limited birth record,
sure,
maybe a story that someone had the foresight to write, to pen, limited, but for the future, they're gonna see like, hey, that's Grandpa doing the clown scary bit on YouTube, scaring people on the streets.
Look at great grandma doing the duck face. Wasn't she cute when she was 13 years old?
Dude, that's horrible, dude. I mean, honestly,
I don't want to get off on that.
Let's wrap it then.
Okay. One of us should post that video that we're talking about over on the Trampled Underfoot Podcast Facebook page. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that.
Okay, cool. So head over to Facebook, and in that search bar, type in Trampled Underfoot Podcast. Hit enter, and that's us. That first link, that's us. Go on over there, and Eloy is going to post that video that we're talking about. It was shot in 1899 on a beach, I think in France somewhere, and I really don't remember. In France, okay. Yeah. So that's Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook.
A Day at the Beach, 1899, all enhanced film, 4K, 60 frames per second is what it's called.
Okay. So we do this every Tuesday evening, usually at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. We got a late start today because suddenly I had an internet outage 10 minutes before showtime. But we ran about 10 minutes late, but everything's copacetic now. So head on over to YouTube on Tuesday nights. Well, head over there now, anytime. But we broadcast live here on YouTube Tuesday nights, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. Go over to YouTube, type in that search bar, Trampled Underfoot Podcast. That's us.
We're
Hope
also
to see you there.
Well, I sure did step in the middle of that. I didn't expect that last. Sorry about that. Hope to see you there, folks. We also have the website. You didn't mention the website?
Nope, I was going to leave that for you.
Okay, you changed it up a little bit here, and so I'm trying to.
Well, you were in the middle of posting, so I was trying to fill time rather.
Oh, I see how that.
Listen to you type.
Well, here. Oh, did you hear the typing?
No, but
Okay. Okay. No, we also have a website, and if you want to catch up on past episodes, and we really do have amazing conversations throughout the history of Trampled Underfoot podcast, and you can go over to the Wayback Machine tab button, click on that, and we have all our past episodes there. And again, we're over on Spreaker as well, Trampled Underfoot Podcast. On Spreaker, we have the YouTube page, which we're going live at right now, and that Facebook page as well. So if you have suggestions, go ahead and leave them in our Facebook page. Check out that video like Mark was mentioning. We're also sponsored by Harneal Media. Harnealmedia.com makes websites, and they include a lot, depending on what you need. They include a lot of different options. You can sell your merchandise from there. You could promote your whatever your gig is, you can promote. And the thing is that Harneal Media does it in a personalized way. The prices are great. All you have to do is just ask for a quote at harnealmedia.com, and that's Steve over at Harneal Media. And he does a lot of websites from a lot of famous YouTubers, and you can see the list of that. I think it's on his website as well. So if you need a solution and you're kind of tired of what you've got now, give Harneal Media send him an email, and he'll let you know what you can do and what he offers. So that's my bit, and we're gonna wrap it up. Since Mark switched up the situation, I'm trying to find my bearing on how to wrap it up by saying the whole thing is total reality and rearrangement here. So I'll just say this: rest of your week, enjoy it, and catch us here next time, Tuesday. And nothing. See ya.
Yeah. See ya. All right. There we go.
Dude, wow. Totally, by doing that,
I was trying to cover for you. Sorry.
I was like, where am I? Should I do this? Should I do that? Because I'm used to, we're used to what we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
But I did that to you early on. At one point, I don't know what happened to me. I just kept talking and talking about like all these, and then all that was left was the Harneal Media information.
Yeah. We used to go back and forth.
Yeah, but we get set in our ways.
Yeah. We did start a little bit. For those of you who came in late, we did start late because I'm not kidding you. About 4 or 5 minutes before we were supposed to hit the button, we've been under thunderstorm warning all day. We had a thunderstorm roll through, and oh my God, it started dumping hail. Now it was only about the size of your thumbnail, dime size hail maybe, but tons of it. And I mean, it was coming down, thunder, lightning, and then turned to rain. It just dumped on us. The wind kicked up. It was going nuts, and internet went out. And it's odd because we have cable TV that stayed on. It was just fine. We have cable voice over phone that stayed on. It was fine. I called Eloy and told him, hey, I lost internet. And we talked the whole time I'm resetting all the modems and the router and everything else, and got back online just in time to be about 10 minutes late. So that's why we were late.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
It's crazy, man. It's great. And that's how we got into talking about technology and what if we were thrown back into the Stone Age and all these different topics. And we ended up with Wikipedia, talking about the old film, how people dressed, Linda's craft, dress of eras of the past was also mentioned. Boy, we went through sort of a theme that sort of stitched itself one to the other, kind of, sort of, with expanding on some topics, going in different little directions. Sure. I think that we keep it together in an, even though it's abstract sometimes. We're not that crazy.
Well, no, not really. Let's see here. Jim Dockrell says studies show that women who carry a little extra weight live longer than the men who comment on it. Yes, exactly. And 5 out of 4 people have problems with fractions. That's another one. So,
no, hey, by the way, that whole thing about women living longer, I don't know. Nothing is across the board 100%, but according to what, and I've studied a lot of, in these past 2 years, I've studied a lot of documents, and not in my own language. And I've studied a lot of documents back to back. I mean, hours and hours. Women usually survive their husbands. Women usually survive their husbands a lot. Yeah. Not always the case, obviously, but in a general consensus of what I see, boy, the guys kick the bucket left and right. Women are going on for 10, 20 years or more in some cases. I'm like, holy smokes, how did that happen?
And better. Yeah. And better. They, on average, they age better than men do. Men just kind of fall apart. We're all little Ford Pintos sitting in the driveway, rusting and falling to pieces. Women tend to age a lot more gracefully than men do. But the old joke, and I screwed it up big time. The old joke was studies show that wives, see, I did it again. Wives live longer than their husbands because they're not married to women. Well, it's a funny joke, but there may be something to it. So,
but then again, the reason I would assume that the reason many men live so long is because of women too. In many cases, I mean, there's something to be said. Like I'm a bachelor, right? There's something, but I've not always been a bachelor. There's something to be said about the warmth, skills, and glue that not just men but women bring to a house, and so that accounts for something.
Well, yeah, not only that, but you have another person to focus on and another person to live for.
Yeah.
Left to your own devices, there's a lot of stuff that goes around, like this room. I'll just use this room as an example. There's a lot of stuff in here I just don't care about. I don't care where it is. I don't care where I put it. I'll tear up the room looking for it, eventually find it, and leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
But this is the room that I use for doing this and for a few other things.
Yeah.
I don't do that in other places of the house because there's somebody else there that gives you somebody else to concern yourself with. I can be selfish back here. I don't want to be selfish out there. So
that's a good point. That's a good point and a good balance. You get what is it? You get to have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah. I mean, but you're right. It is a balance because I could just leave that dirty glass on the countertop, but it's better to go put it in the sink where it belongs. Then we'll fill the dishwasher and then everything will be okay. So I'm not saying that I'm a slob by nature, but what I'm saying is when you have somebody else in the house that you got to look and help take care of, it changes your focus a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I'm less likely to leave a dirty glass sitting on the counter. I'm more likely to go put it where it belongs.
No, totally. I've seen. I will not hide the. I've seen in those areas. I've seen myself decline like crazy. My organizational. I mean, left to your own devices, and I can't speak for every guy, but what the hell?
Now, Steve Nealon over at Harneo Media said you need to link Linda's video. It's fascinating to watch. He's talking about that video. I'll ask Linda's permission, and if she says yes, it's okay to go ahead and post a link to it. I'll link her video on her 1700s 1700s working class woman's outfit.
Wait a second. You have
over on our Facebook page.
Wait a second. You obviously you have to ask Linda, but then you have to send it over to our video committee so that they can examine it and editorialize, and then they make those decisions up there. We're not.
Oh, she's already editorialized. Believe me. Jerry said something about the way people dressed and everything being tight. And he said it was also due to women not ever showing skin back then. Truth. Absolute truth. They not only did they not show skin, it was considered basically sinful to ever be naked, unless you were a baby. The foundation garment, the whole thing, everything was based on, and this is the kind of stuff I learned with her around. I learned more about this stuff than I ever wanted to know. They wore what they called a shift. And it was just imagine a long nightshirt, and they wore it 24/7. They slept in it. They wore it to work. They wore it when they got home. If they took off they never took it off. If you were out of your shift, you were shiftless in every sense of the word. And shiftless meant basically slutty. You were a sinful person if you were shiftless.
In the 1700s, though,
Yeah.
At least, no, I'm saying that in the 1700s though, um, and maybe I'm looking at it from like memory of old, I guess, paintings and movies, but at least in France, that's where I kind of, it always goes back to France. They had these I don't know what you call them, but they push those breasts up nice and they plump up, and then so they had this whole, but then the Victorian age came and everybody became prudish and this and that. But there was a time even earlier on when they were doing the sexy, no?
To a point, yes, but that was always like that. But you wore a scarf, you wore a neck scarf, and tucked it in at the top so you didn't show any skin. And the Victorians got even higher collars. That's when the buttoned up collars came in. The French were always a little bit different. Now, royalty over in the royal court, that was different as well. The king decided what you wore, basically. You could come out in, your finery and frills and all this other good stuff. But if Louis XIV said, get rid of that neck scarf and let's see what you're hiding under there, it's good to be the king,
Hey, Louis should have tempered himself, but he did have the right idea.
Yeah, I mean, but that was the French court, like Linda says right here, where excess abounded. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't remember which king it was, but he started the whole wig thing with everybody had a powdered wig because he was bald. And so he wore a wig. And then everybody wanted to be like the king, so they started wearing wigs. And pretty soon the wigs just got more fancy and piled up higher and higher and higher. And they would actually have a servant walking around with a little forked stick. Of course, it didn't look like a forked stick that held the wig up. They were so tall.
Did you just say fork and stick?
Forked stick.
Say that fast 100 times.
That. No, it wasn't 100. Never mind. Okay.
I don't think, because I heard something else.
Yeah, I know you heard something else, but that's not what I know. You think you understood what I said, but what you heard was not what I meant.
A fork and stick.
A fork and stick. A fork and a stick.
Yeah.
So,
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it was completely crazy.
But then they did do, so, I mean, so I guess the French court, what I'm getting at is that was risque. Because they were showing showing the cleavage, and they knew it. I mean, that had to be wild.
But that was the royal court. That was not the common people, and they were very rarely seen by the common people, so they could do what they wanted.
But do we know that for a fact that the common people didn't?
Well, behind closed doors, who can tell what happened? But out in public,
they were dressed to.
They wore the shift, and then they wore they made way for the corset, but they wore what they were called stays, and they were like 4 or 5 layers of fabric, and the 2 cores, you had channels in these cores that had whalebone, baleen run through them. That basically it was back support. It compressed you, and it basically gave you support up front, but it was also tighter than a son of a gun. And that's where the phrase "a loose woman" comes from, because when they got uncomfortable and got too hot, they would loosen up those stays and things would kind of relax down. Well, a loose woman was a woman who either didn't give a ding dong, or she didn't have a pair of stays. She couldn't afford to get a pair or make a pair.
Cigarettes and whiskey and fine women will drive you crazy and drive you insane.
Yep.
Oh, it's wild and wild women.
Yep.
Did I say fine or wild?
You want to see a good video. You'll have to look for it. I don't know if it's on YouTube. I really don't know. Look for Peter Sellers doing that on the Muppet Show, singing that song. Yeah.
Once I was happy and had a good life.
Yep. It's excellent. He's sitting there beating on a bass drum, talking like a revival preacher from the early 1900s.
Yeah,
Cigarettes and whiskey and wild, wild women.
that's a great. Well, let's not get into that, but I love that Americana
Mm-hmm.
wagon wheel busted on the side of the road, the sound of clinking beer mugs in the distance in a town lit by like fires and just
The
that
honky
whole.
tonk piano in the saloon and the whole thing.
Yeah, dude, there's something about the whole thing that is so freaking just, I don't know, but that's in my mind, because I'm sure if I was standing there, I'd be, where's the computer? Where's your internet bar around
No,
here?
yeah, you wouldn't want to be there, mainly because the life expectancy was like 35. If you were 60 years old, you were an antique. So
Yeah.
But we can sit here and be nostalgic all we want to.
Yeah.
And there are some things that I do miss, but there's a lot more that I don't miss, and I'm glad a lot of it's gone. So it's I don't know, it's a trade-off.
You don't miss, I don't know if you don't miss newspapers being smacked on your front door that you didn't pay for subscription for, but they did it in the hopes that you'd get hooked on it.
Now, let me throw this at you. I don't miss the newspaper, but I do miss the rubber bands on the doorknob.
Okay.
How many times did you need a rubber band and you just walked over to that one doorknob and there they were?
Yeah.
Did you ever in your life buy rubber bands?
I did, though, but we used a lot of rubber bands. I don't even know why, but we did have packs of rubber bands as well. And they had we did have always a pack of rubber bands around.
I didn't buy rubber bands until I was in my 50s. Why would you buy a rubber band? You got rubber bands all over the ding dong place.
Nah, but we used them up, and I don't know. I can't tell you here why.
Well,
I can't tell you here why, but my dad did a lot of
If you're in a situation where one rubber band a day on the newspaper wasn't enough, I can see that. Surely somebody had to buy rubber bands, otherwise they wouldn't have made them and had them in the stores for sale.
Right.
But I didn't buy a rubber band until I was in my mid-50s. Easily. It's like, why would you? They're over there on the doorknob. You want a rubber band? Go get it. I still have, Linda has a ball of rubber bands. She just made a ball of rubber bands. And it started out the size of a softball, and it's working its way down now. It's about the size of a racquetball. So,
one thing that back then, my grandmother, she was Catholic, so, but back in the day, and I don't think that after COVID, the Jehovah's Witness would always come knocking and stuff, and my grandmother never. My dad would argue with them for a little bit and then get tired and leave, but my grandmother would always accept their little, because they thought they were doing such a great deed with that little fly, that Attila or whatever that newspaper.
Oh, the Watchtower.
Yeah, they'd give them and my grandmother, and so years after, like cleaning out the house, there was like stacks of like Jehovah's Witness paraphernalia in one of my drawers. I was like, I opened it and said, well, I know the story of this, but I got to get rid of all this stuff, and it's piled up, stuff like that. There's a lot of things that don't. I don't know why I just remembered that.
We could do an entire podcast about that, about the importance we used to put on keeping material items and keeping them in good shape. And I was thinking about it earlier today when I was, looking at a YouTube playlist of stuff, that it's not that long ago. I mean, within the last 15 years, that if you wanted, say you were a fan of the TV show Barney Miller, you would have to go hunt down a box set of Barney Miller episodes, and you could get them on DVD or VHS or whatever. And now you can just stream them online. So when I think about the money we wasted, the money we threw away, and at the time it was not a waste. We were not throwing away money. We were collecting. Yes, it was a luxury by all means, but we were collecting something that was important to us that we would sit and watch. So you would have all of Barney Miller season 3, and I can sit and binge watch that tonight while some other poor sap who didn't go buy the DVD can't.
Yeah.
Not realizing now and thinking back on it now that, yeah, it's only $25 today, but $25 back then was worth a little bit more. And that $25 could have been spent on something else because it's just not necessary anymore.
The life that we and when I say we, just in generally speaking, that we built as a society. I'm just going to put a tick at the start in the 50s, at post World War II, into the 90s and into the 2000s. That era, that string together sort of section of the way we consumed prior to this internet explosion, and ticking it off at World War II, the end of. And there were progressions in it, obviously, but the way we consumed entertainment media, the world that was built, barring all the tragedies, but entertainment-wise, how people could, entertain themselves, was a very special musically. It was a special time because there was so much availability. We hadn't quite reached where we're at now. But there was also, I hate to say, a certain amount of innocence in many things.
Right.
It was an amazing, and I think that we've crossed the Rubicon on that. We left a chunk of era behind.
We have, and some of it for the better, some of it not. But we were focused on physical media that you could hold in your hand. I can pick up a record album and I can hold that in my hand. It's a tangible item. I paid for it. I bought it. It's mine. It's right here. And the same with a VHS tape or an 8mm film or a CD or a cassette or whatever. And it's just not important anymore.
Polaroids.
Yeah. A Polaroid camera because it was instant photography. Well, yeah, but we've got the phone now. And that's instant photography, and point, shoot, set it and forget it. And it's already done. But the amount of money we spent, stereo systems, it's great to have the album, but now you got to have a turntable to play it on. You got to have either an integrated amplifier or an amp and preamp or a tuner to play that through, to go through your big monster Bose speakers that are so big you had to move. Not anymore. Now it's a little thing that connects wirelessly, and you set up a playlist on Spotify, hit the button and start it with this tune right here. And you can take that same device from your house into the car, and it'll play on the car stereo as easily as it'll play on whatever device you're using at home, be it a computer, a smart TV, whatever, Bluetooth, or you've got your earbuds. So it's put, does anybody have a stereo system anymore?
I'm sure there's people.
That used to be, I still have one. I use that 100-watt amp. That's the sound system the computer in the other room plays through. In here, I don't even have speakers. I don't have speakers. I don't have an amp. I don't have nothing. I got these headphones. That's it.
I would not have dreamt of ever living without a stereo all my life. But currently, I don't have a stereo, but my computer, like you're just saying, is everything.
Exactly.
But there's something to be said about being able to, blow out some tunes. But then you can do it from the computer. It's just, we've crossed that line in the sand, let's say, of yesteryear's entertainment style.
The 8mm film industry came and went. The video cassette industry came and went. The last VCRs were made in 2013. Nobody makes VCRs anymore. You can't buy one. It's getting that way with DVD players. It's getting to the point to where the only DVD player you're going to find is going to be on a tower PC. The tower PC is on its way out as well, except for like gaming systems. I mean, offices are going to need computers, but they're starting to rely on them less and less. But, you know, what can you say? It's just, you know, difference in technology. It's a different day. It's a different time.
Yeah. I guess we'll leave it at that. We've had our run. And good night to Jim, Jerry, Steve, and everyone else that let me see.
Yeah, Rick
Linda,
French.
Rick.
And a bunch of other folks that dropped in to say howdy, howdy.
Yep. So yeah, we had a good one and we almost missed it because of that thunderstorm. So enjoy your week, guys.
Yep. Thanks. We'll see you next week. Thanks for hanging out, y'all.